a gigantic book. This is the biggest book in my library. It's actually about the Taj Mahal, but this is a huge book. And this is my analogy. That in this huge book, on every page, is a mistake that L. Ron Hubbard made. And I know every one of them because I made a study of it. Every page is filled with his mistakes. Now, back up, and you're in a library. There's a lot of books. Those are all the things he did right. To set the theme of this little Middle East 1001 Nights magical, this little poster, it's nothing grand.
Very nice.
But now here, watch this. If you'll just step back a little bit, and then watch what happens when the light turns off automatically. Now we have a big, I love Murphy beds. And this carpet I bought in Safi, Morocco in 1970. I paid $20 for it. This carpet was wall-to-wall carpet in my office on the ship, and this one was wall-to-wall carpet in my cabin on the ship. And they're just marvelous. And then this chest I bought also in Safi. And I was able to have it shipped here, and it opens up, you know, TV, which I never watch. But
so you had that on the ship?
Yes, I did. It was in my cabin. It was marvelous. Just watch this.
It's a door within a door.
This is half of a Moroccan door. It's been cut down. The original would be much higher. And this, you might as well see, or maybe you could show it later. It's my uniform jacket.
Oh, let's see that.
Which still fits. I did have it taken out a little bit on the sides.
There it is.
That is...
Your CR uniform with the...
My rank was ensign.
Okay.
And then this blue means I was on Commodore's staff. This propeller right here is because I got my rank in the engine room. So there we have.
Wow.
And by the way, this was so well made. It was made in Valencia, Spain. Those tailors were just magnificent.
Okay, so let's start with some formalities. Could you please state your name and where you're from originally?
Right, I'm Sylvia Calhoun, born in Long Beach, California, 1947. Heaven. It was just the most beautiful, perfect time to incarnate in the most beautiful, wonderful place. As a child, I always wanted to know what's going on here, what's the deal. I had a lot of questions. And I had a very happy childhood. Beautiful, wonderful parents. They did get divorced when I was 12, but they were just fantastic parents. And so my mother and I were living in Santa Barbara, California in 1961-62. I was in junior high. And I went to a roller skating rink with some friends. And the manager of the roller skating rink, his name was Robert Sewell. And one time, he was talking to me and he said, you know, you have a lot of questions. He said, I suggest you go down to the Santa Barbara Public Library and check out a book called Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health. So I did. I just went straight down, got it. And so I would sit on the floor. I had a very large geography book. And I'd put the book Dianetics behind it. So my mother would walk past my bedroom, peek in now and again. And she's studying geography. No, no. That book took my head off, as it did millions of people in the 60s and 70s, which I consider to be the heyday. That book changed my life because one of the main questions that I always had as a small child, well, I ran across a book in my parents' library back in grade school, and I looked in this book and I saw this photograph of these naked bodies piled up dead. And I said to my mother, what is this? And she explained the Holocaust. And my question was, how could human beings do this to another?
Right.
So when I read DMSMH, it answered that quite, not 100%, you know, about the subconscious mind and this and that, but it answered it for me. So at that time, I made a 6-year plan. I had to finish the 9th grade. I had to do 3 years of high school, 2 years of photography school. I'd already decided I was going to go to Brooks Institute of Photography, and then I was going to go to St. Hill. And I did it. After I finished school, I flew to Naples, Italy, where my sister was living with her husband, who was in the Navy. I said, well, when are we going to go to St. Hill? And she said, well, there's a ship where L. Ron Hubbard's on a ship now, and that's where OTs go. And boy, that Atlas Shrugged picture, I said, well, I guess we're going there then.
This is what year?
Thank you. It was February of 1968.
Okay.
And I was 20, still 20.
Okay.
Soon to be 21. And so my sister and I and her 2 children flew. Her husband was in the United States. When he got back to Naples and we were all gone, well, he ended up joining the ship. His name was Jerry McDonald.
Okay.
And he was a Navy man. He was out of the Navy by then. And LRH loved him because he really knew ships and this and that. So anyway, we went, February of 68, we went to the ship in Valencia, Spain. Pretty sure it was in Valencia.
So what was it like? Describe that first day when you're like, okay, here we are.
Well, here's the deal, and thank you for asking. You triggered a real interesting point. I had never done a comm course. I had never done a moment's worth of audit. No one had audited me. I read the book in 1962, and now I'm on the ship.
Wow.
In 1968. Ready to go. Let's do it. Let's do this thing, as they say now. Otto Roos once said my gradient was like this. Oh, Sylvia's gradient was like that. But there I was. So, just did some odd jobs on the ship for a while, and then we had a little problem. My beloved friend, Leon Steinberg, to this day, one of my best friends, he and his wife Jill, he was the captain of the ship, but he grew up in New York City. He didn't know anything from ships. None of us knew anything about ships. So we were at lunch one day, and the wind came up, and we were at anchor, and the ship dragged anchor a little bit, and it touched the breakwater. Mm. Thank God nothing happened. No, thank God. Well, later on we went to dry dock, nothing happened. Well, so LRH was just beside himself. He was on a different ship. So he came aboard, and we were all put into a condition of liability. That was the famous Liability Cruise, which is kind of like boot camp. If you're gonna go into the Sea Organization without 1 minute of auditing or training, might as well just do the liability.
Oh, Lord. How many months into your...
You know, it seemed like months into my...
from the point you landed
maybe 2 months.
So you...
Brand new.
Basically green as anything.
Green as green.
With some ambitions and ideas and some knowingness. And there you are thrust into...
Well, when I read Dianetics and Modern Science and Mental Health, that was it. I was going to do this. You know, so yeah, I was very green. And so LRH made Mary Sue the captain, and there was John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe was sent there. John O'Keefe was not in a condition. He was, sent there to help us not sink ourselves. And there were others. So anyway, it was just an amazing adventure. And per liability at the time, you couldn't bathe. But it was February in the south of Spain. It was not hot. We were scruffy looking. And there was this one little adventure we had. So we had to do our AB check sheet, able-bodied seaman check sheets. Mm-hmm. So this one particular day, the assignment was to get on a lifeboat. Boy, those lifeboats, wow. They were just these heavy wooden lifeboats, and they weren't all that seaworthy. But so a bunch of us got in these lifeboats. And because I was, had just graduated from Brooks Institute of Photography, I was kind of like the photographer.
Okay.
So I brought along, I had, my Nikon and my film. Look at this darling
Your
boy.
cat's
Look
going
at
off
this,
over
my
there in the corner.
darling boy. Oh my God, I love him. So we got in these lifeboats, got in the water, rowed, and it was a simple assignment. It was just to be able to learn how to do something from point A to point B, document it, finish the cycle, like you would do in anything in life.
Mm-hmm.
So the 3 boats we rowed, we had oars. We didn't even have motors. So we're rowing. Luckily for me, because I was the photographer, I didn't have to row. I was sitting at the bow of this boat, and I could take pictures. Beautiful sunny day in the south of Spain. A little nippy. We all had our pea coats on. Mm. And then the wind came up. It was time to row back. Couldn't do it.
Really, the current was so strong.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. So we got beached on this strait, and this is the south of Spain when Franco was in power, by the way. That was
big fascist.
It was fascist, and I have to say, the country was so quiet. You go, when you went ashore, women had to wear a skirt or a dress, period. So okay, you did that. All women in Spain. But it was quiet. Nobody put a foot out of order. It was just very quiet. So anyway, we got beached. And we stayed there all day, thinking maybe we could get back. We couldn't. So I took pictures, and I have a whole, I have a whole disc of pictures of a lot of them are in Janice Gillam's book, which I have handy. She published some of the pictures.
Right.
So I took all those pictures, and then at some point, some members of the Guardia Civil showed up, and they were the Spanish military, part of the military they had. And they had the 3-cornered hats. And they just didn't know what to make of us. I think we overheard under their breath. They were saying, Rushkis. I thought we were Russians. Because back in the day, only Russian women would be, this was Soviet Union time, and, the women were like, not exactly
a little gnarly looking.
A little gnarly. And of course, the Liability Cruise, very gnarly. So they didn't know what to make of us. And so they tried to get us back. They brought out some kind of fishing boat. And we got on the boat, and they took us to the ship, which was anchored out. But then the waves by that time were so severe we couldn't even get aboard.
Gotcha.
Through the cattle doors. So we were taken back, and they brought a panel truck, kind of like a truck, not a panel truck, a truck with wooden sides. Mm-hmm. And they took us to a restaurant that was closed for the season. And they said, well, you can sleep here in the restaurant until tomorrow, which we did. We just sort of slept on the concrete floor.
Better than jail, for sure.
Yeah, we weren't arrested. Here we are breaching. We didn't have any ID on us or passports or anything on us. They were very kind. Yeah. And one of the pictures, one of the Guardia Civil is laughing with James Byrne, and just cracking up. It was a very, very, they were very polite. And so the next morning, the sea was completely calm, as happens, even here. Mm-hmm. And we were able to make our way back to the ship.
And when you got back, were there any repercussions to that, or?
You're already in liability. What more do you want? No, that was a good question.
It's like, okay, now take mud and rub it all over yourself.
No, it was. No, I remember Mary Sue greeted us warmly, and I took pictures of people coming aboard. I got aboard with my boat, and then as I took pictures of people coming aboard, and I have to tell you, there was so much laughter. There's the point that I want to make in this interview. I never laughed so much in my life is I left from 1968 to 1972 when I was on that ship, and even afterwards when I worked out. Laughing like belly laugh, like hold your stomach, tears coming down your face, laughter. There were so many funny things. So, you'd get together at a meal and just, consider the events of the day, and it would just start in. Things people did, things people said, events that happened. It was hilarious. And you're young and you're full of life and you're going to save the planet. I mean, it's exciting, So anyway, we got back after. No, there was nothing. We just continued on our merry way. And here's a little funny thing. We were sailing. Apparently the charts for the ship were out of date. Why am I not surprised? It was a ferry boat going across the English Channel back in Winston Churchill's time. So those are pretty much the charts we had, I guess. So we were in these beautiful waters off, I don't know, just the south of Spain. I can think of some names, but we didn't know it. We were in waters that were completely forbidden. It was Spanish military waters. And it was like, Gidget goes to Valencia. Ooh. And so at some point the Guardia Civil came out and boarded our boat. And I was being the hostess at the time, and I literally, like 23 years old, and I came up to these guys. There was a mentality that every person we met, even though we did not disseminate Scientology, we didn't even say the word. It was just strictly, we were just a ship. We were just business management. We were not disseminating or proselytizing. But in our heart of hearts, every person you ran into, you just wanted them to be free. And there was an innocence to that. And so I just remember these guys coming over, and they did have machine guns slung over their shoulders. They never pointed them at us.
Right.
But we felt perfectly safe, But I just remember coming up and literally, offering these guys, would you like coffee or tea? And they looked at me like, who are these people? Who are these people? Because we didn't fit any category.
Right.
And we were from all over the world. People from Israel, Australia, South Africa, England, America, all over the world, Germany, Denmark. So here's this little international group of people. They basically said, you need to leave.
That away.
And coffee or tea? And it's like, I know, it's like attraction. That, by the way, this is the kind of laughing we used to do. This is exactly the kind of laughing we used to do. Every day, many times a day. The absurdity of this situation is like, it was like they're telling us we need to leave. Okay. So, and so we did ultimately leave, and we did ultimately finish the Liability Cruise. And I have to say, what an experience in your life. I mean, just to learn a little bit about sailing.
Right.
About, and so, I think it lasted about three weeks, as I recall, that you didn't bathe. But like I said, it wasn't hot weather. And the food was not.
Was everyone basically on board with the liability, or did you have a couple of people that were just like nattering and going crazy, and or was it just esprit de corps?
Oh, esprit de corps, 100%. Every now and again, when I worked with the old man, let's just say that's my affectionate term, he'd call me in and we'd have chat. He would just chat with various ones. And this one time, he called me and he said, well, honey, he said, I just finished the second danger formula, and it was much expanded, the expanded danger formula. He said, I realized something, that the Liability Cruise should have been danger.
Oh, God.
And I said to him, "Oh, really? I could have had a bath." And it went right over his head. A couple of pictures I wanted to show. This is a bunch of us going on a shore trip in Madeira. One of my favorite places in the whole wide world is Madeira. And we took a bus ride, we did a tour, we had some wonderful meals, and that was the ship behind us. And by the way, one other thing I'm glad I remembered. You know, we used to get 4 pounds a week, which the pound was strong, the dollar was strong. And when we were in various countries like Greece, well, we went to Sardinia, but not to Italy. It's a good thing. I was always praying we wouldn't go to southern Italy because I was afraid I'd jump ship. Went to Sardinia, went to Marseille, France. I don't even remember being in Marseille, France, but we were. Anyway, but I loved Portugal. So we would just throw our pay packets in our drawer because we didn't have anything to spend it on. All our needs were met. So that when we got Liberty, every other weekend, or maybe not that often, but there were times where we got Liberty every other weekend. Mm-hmm. And we'd go ashore and we could stay in a 5-star hotel and eat Chateaubriand, you know, the finest meal, because our money went so far. And we did have fun. And then this is a picture I took of a bunch of guys. I just saw a bunch of people standing on the rail. Paul Eilert, Richard Gorman, Bill Greenwald, Robin Lenzel, Norman Starkey, Jeff Walker, may he rest in peace. What a neat guy. We were in the engine room together and all this. He was so, and then he became a class 12, I think. Ernie Martin, Jeff Barnes, and then there's somebody I'm not sure, and then Suzette, and then Deanna, the sister of Peaches Pook, daughters of Alan and Virginia Capular. So, anyway, just a sunny day in the Mediterranean.
Went to Sea Org, remember, just hanging out.
Oh no, we're being tortured nonstop. I'm sorry. I mean, look, there was a lot of good times. I'm sorry. So, my sister and I were on the ship. This is before the Liability Cruise, when we first came aboard.
Right. So February
68.
Yep.
And the Liability Cruise happened pretty shortly after that.
Right.
But there was that period of time where we had students aboard. They were doing OT levels on the ship. Public.
Okay.
Yeah, And so, at one point, I think it was Otto Roos, introduced me to LRH right soon after he came aboard. And he said, "Sir, I'd like you to meet a new recruit, Sylvia Calhoun, whatever." And I looked up at the old man. He wasn't terribly tall, but he seemed like 6'6". He wasn't. He might have been 6'1" or 2". I mean, maybe not even that tall, but he seemed, and he had this beautiful uniform on, you know. And so I just looked up at him, and he looked over at me, and he said, "Welcome aboard, honey." God, it was awesome. It was just like, having read that book in 1962, and now it's 1968, and I still hadn't had a minute of auditing or training, but I was there. And here's like, he said, "Welcome aboard, honey." Oh, it was just magical. So, but when he did come aboard like a day or two earlier, before I met him, I mean, I did take a picture. I don't know if you can. By the way, you may have this. I have other copies.
Oh wow, that's incredible. So what I'll do is I'll take a picture of it later and.
So yeah, so it's Craig Lipschitz, Craig Lipschitz from, I want to say South Africa. It might have been England. Anyway, there's the old man. There's Mary Sue. There's my beloved Leon Steinberg, a dear friend to this day, and then Irene Dunleavy at the time. Later, Irene Howie.
Okay, that was the first picture you took.
First one. Oh well, first one I took of him.
Of him.
I have another couple of pictures. When I came aboard the ship, I brought with me to Europe and then to the ship my big camera, my film equipment from Brooks Institute, which was a 4x5 view camera. Those are those big, like you put a black cloth over your head.
That's what you see like in the old movies.
Yeah.
With the big flash thing that goes.
Well, I wasn't that old. Oh no, we had moved past.
Okay.
Okay.
Like, you'll sit there for a couple of hours.
No, so this is what I mean. What is it about us? I mean, anybody that's had a, you just, I have met the best people in my life, indirectly or directly, through L. Ron Hubbard. I only met you today, and we're like soulmates. There's something there.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I had this 4x5 view camera, and we were in Valencia, and I took a picture of the ship with a view camera. Does it show?
Yeah, if you hold it probably towards your chest area, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Hold them there. Yeah.
So that is with a 4x5 view camera, just a picture of the ship in March of 1968 in Valencia. And then this, another kind of angle. This was a super angulon lens. That is a magnificent wide angle lens.
That's a picture and a half right there. That's impressive.
It's
Wow.
called the Royal Scotsman, and then they painted out the S to make it the Royal Scotman.
Obviously I've never seen that picture before. It's impressive.
No, nobody's seen it. So fast forward, I'll just briefly tell this. In about 1970 or 71, LRH asked me to do a portrait of him, which I did. So that's the picture I took of him.
Which every Scientologist knows that.
Of course, there's no byline. I don't,
There's no byline, though.
No, no, she never existed, which is fine.
Hold it up to your chest if you would.
Yeah.
Just to...
And it's not the best portrait I've ever done. I was a little nervous. I was never nervous sitting talking to him. Are we?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay. I was never nervous to sit and talk to him. But to photograph him kind of made me a little nervous. So anyway, a few years ago, I was in Hollywood and I went into the Cinerama Dome.
Yep.
For a movie. And they had a bookstore, and they had this glossy book of L. Ron Hubbard's science fiction. And it was a gorgeous coffee table book of all his science fiction titles and pictures. And I thumbed through the book, and there's about a 5x7 image of that portrait that I took. And it said, self-portrait.
Huh.
Right. I don't mind not having a byline, just don't lie.
Right.
Nobody on this planet can do a self-portrait with a 4x5 view camera. I mean, you'd have to really be OT. You'd have to be OT with full perception and be able to... You've got to focus the thing with a magnifying glass. You can't do it.
Yeah. Now, were you on course? Were you studying, or was it just work?
No, work.
At any point did you start getting on course, or did you want to be an auditor, and did you want to go to the OT section?
I wanted to clear the planet.
So you were like just work admin, more or less.
Yes.
Yeah.
LRH made me his personal photographer for a while, and I was on his personal staff for a little while, and then at some point I requested to work in the engine room.
Okay.
I petitioned him. I said I'd like to do that, and it was wonderful.
Yeah, I read her book. Well, both of them. Janice's book, and it seems like that was a place to be.
Yes. Yes. I'm not stupid. I need my sleep.
Huh.
And I don't like to be cold. So the engine room was always warm. Because if you're up on the bridge, it can get pretty nippy. And so anyway, our shifts were 6 hours on, 12 hours off, which is a little funny. Mm-hmm. It was okay. But, I mean, at least you got your sleep. I can't operate without sleep. This is going to sound strange to anybody who might watch this that was there then. I never lost a night's sleep, ever. in 4 years. And there were people that were so sleep deprived, I just kind of never went into agreement with that for myself. There was one time we sailed across the Mediterranean from maybe south of Spain to northern Morocco. I don't exactly remember, but anyway, it must have been because it was way early on. And there's a wonderful young woman named Lori Wood. I think she died quite young. But she was very sweet, and she was the supercargo. Well, none of us were trained, to do whatever. You just learned it as you went. Mm-hmm. And LRH said, just remember it from a past life. You'll know how. And you'd be amazed at how much if somebody just tells you you can do it, it's amazing how much you can do, So anyway, so we sailed, it was about a 2-day trip with no food.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, there was a little food. And it was just the weirdest thing. We would file into the dining room and sit down. And there'd be a little something. And I can actually remember, I was sitting next to a guy, I don't remember who it was, but I was sitting next to a guy, and we had just this soup that was just kind of clear liquid. And I looked down, I had 1.5 lentil beans in my bowl, and he had 2.5, and my hand to God, I coveted his
his extra beans.
I coveted his extra beans, and then I kind of had a Scarlett O'Hara moment. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Gone with the Wind. There's a scene there that I can barely stand to think about without getting choked up. But it was when, civilians always suffer so much in a war. And I guess they were starving. The North was encroaching. And she ran out into the, her backyard of Tara, the field, and she grabs a turnip and she holds it up to the sky. This is just, I'm sorry, the scene. She says, as God is my witness, I will never be hungry again. And I just thought, I'm going to get I'm not going to be hungry again. So whenever we'd go to these little ports of call, I'd head straight to a little grocery store, and there was always these, and I'd stock up on Campbell's soup, Campbell's pork and beans, trail mix. I made my own trail mix, dried fruit, nuts. I get all kind of nuts. And I'd take them back to my cabin, and I'd just have this little stash. And ultimately in my cabin, I had a hot plate, I had a teapot, I had a coffee pot, I don't know, you just put me down in the middle of a cardboard box, and I will start making a little house and a kitchen, tiny house. And ultimately I got a little refrigerator, a little Swedish Electrolux, and that fit in there. And so, so when we went to sea, and sometimes, quite frankly, you didn't feel like, by the time, other times we went to sea, we had food, no problem. You didn't feel like eating it anyway, because, the ship was, so, crackers and stuff. But I would always make tea and coffee and soup and stuff. So I truly never, ever went hungry again, and nobody else really went hungry. It's just the food wasn't that great, but I don't know, it's just one of those experiences in your life that, and then later on, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but later on, I pretty much always had a cabin. And after 11:30 was pretty much time to shut down. And after study or whatever, and I just invite anybody in, and we'd just fill my cabin. There'd be people just stacked onto the bed on the floor, sitting around, and I'd be making tea for everybody, and we'd just throw out the question, kind of like, consider the events of the day, and we would be laughing and debriefing and cracking up. And there was a very funny guy, his name was Max Prudente. He was just funny. He's just one of those guys who could say things funny. And he called it the Sylvia Calhoun Dramatization Hour. Isn't that funny? So yeah, so anyway, so where were we? That was when we sailed with no food.
As opposed to other accounts, your account is that there was a lot of levity and a lot of
Oh yes.
happiness on board the ship, which
Yes.
maybe other people haven't really communicated
No,
about.
they haven't. And I would like to give a little illustration. I brought this huge book. I'll just show
Yeah.
you. This is a gigantic book. This is the biggest book in my library. It's actually about the Taj Mahal, but this is a huge book. And this is my analogy. That in this huge book, on every page, is a mistake that L. Ron Hubbard made. And I know every one of them because I made a study of it. Every page is filled with his mistakes. Now, back up, and you're in a library. There's a lot of books. Those are all the things he did right. You think this whole thing came to be because this monster brainwashed us all into something? I'm sorry for people who that's their memory, but it's not balanced. You know, not every day was a walk in the park for me either, although I just had a pretty easy time of it. I did. But anybody that, you know, if you say this is good or that's good, oh yeah, but what about this? What about, excuse me, it's in the book, page 38. Your grievance, it's all in here. The book is on the shelf. We're going to talk about the good times. We're going to talk about the happy times. We're going to talk about why we were there, you know. And so that's what I want to talk about. There was so much laughter, which a lot of people forget about the laughter and the good times and the parties and going ashore. And one of my fondest memories is of occasionally we would put on a party for the dignitaries ashore, like maybe the mayor of some town in Spain, Portugal, whatever. We had some guests aboard from Morocco, but I just remember this one particular party, and I guess I was working in public relations at the time for the ship, Div 6 or whatever. Now I think I was in LRH's personal staff, and then Liz Osley, Gablehouse, was in charge of public relations. And we put on this cocktail party, for local dignitaries. We had caviar out there, and we had drinks, and we had hors d'oeuvres, and there's something about a ship that human beings get so drawn to. It represents freedom. It represents the freedom to come and go. It represents kind of an exciting life. And people love to be invited aboard a ship. And so they came aboard, and there was, I don't know, music, I don't know, but just conversation, cocktails, hors d'oeuvres. I don't remember much conversation because I don't speak other languages, regrettably. But it didn't matter, you know, because I hate to get so choked up, but because it was just such a magical evening. And when they went down the gangway to leave, I cannot describe the love between those people and us. Because it was more than just normal. It was more than just normal. Here we were, all these people wanting to make the world a better place. And they kind of knew it. We didn't say anything. And I think it was later that night, LRH called me in to his office, and he said, well, honey, how'd it go? How was the party? And I said, sir, I can't describe the good feelings that were in that room. And he said, speaking of us on the ship, when they look into your eyes, they see eternity. It's those memories and those moments that I've never really had anything quite like that in the real world. I mean, I have had great moments, but when you have a ship full of people and they're there for one reason, to make the world a better place, and that is their motivation.
And it's pure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you don't live a lifestyle like that and have it not be pure. I mean, if you're not committed. And so, with that as your motivation and that as your goal, and that's why even when I just met you today, when I meet a Scientologist, a person that was in Scientology that I never knew, or an old timer that I did know, there's that commonality, that common motivation. Because later on I read some books by Deepak Chopra, and one of the things he said was the difference between ego and spirit. What's in it for me is ego. How can I help is spirit. Well, we were sure as the world not there for ego. It's what humanity is all about. And this ties into something else. There's sometimes you'll hear somebody say, well, we were kicked out of this port. We were kicked out of that port.
Right.
The intimation of that, am I using the right word, intimation? Like, what is the assumption of that?
I understand.
The assumption of that word is that we did something so obnoxious that we got kicked out.
The inference.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh boy, that's so good. It was not like that at all. It was not like that at all. They loved us. Why? We were so well behaved. We were not trying to, proselytize to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But there was something about us that they could just tell, what is it about these people? It's something you can't, it's just the feeling of love, And so what would happen, the CIA was on our ass the whole time. It was outrageous. And they're still...
Mm-hmm.
So they would come into a port where we were, like Corfu, Greece, or the various ports that we went to, and they'd go in and talk to the port captain's office or whatever, and they'd lie about us or whatever and say, get him out of here, get him out of your port. And we, all of a sudden, when we were asked to leave, we were actually invited back in Greece, somewhere in, I forget which, we were invited back. They loved us so much. And they had their own little run-ins with the CIA, didn't they all?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we finally got to Morocco, and I think I know why we were so well treated. My theory is that Morocco is always, you never hear anything bad coming out of Morocco, like Algeria or Tunisia or whatever, Because I think what the kings have done, those 3 generations, the CIA just said, they just went along with what the CIA said. The CIA basically said, if you just do things our way,
We'll leave you alone.
everything will be fine. This is just my assumption. So what I think may have happened is the CIA said to the king, these people, we're not real fond of them, but just be nice to them so we can keep an eye on them. I think that may have been
why
why it was all.
that port was safe for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
And I loved Portugal. I loved Lisbon, all the ports up and down Portugal, but particularly I love the island of Madeira. And that, we used to go there every Christmas and New Year's. And, Madeira, so wonderful. And there was, being a photographer, you can appreciate this. There was a photography studio there run by the Perestrelos brothers. They were older men at that time. Well, I was 24. Well, everybody's older. But their family had been the town photographers since photography was invented. And, which was a couple generations,
Sure.
maybe only one. But they did all the postcards, they did all the weddings, they did all the events. So when I went in to take some film in to get processed, they just fell in love with me, and vice versa. They were like my uncles.
You can talk the same language.
Oh, yeah. Well, here comes this young girl from America, and they're pretty isolated out there.
Sure.
And I showed them my portfolio from Brooks Institute. That did it. They were just amazed. And so they were so good to me, and especially Albert Perestrellos. He'd take me to lunch now and again, but you felt the love there, like he was an uncle. Fast forward, decades later, my late husband and I flew into Madeira. We were going to do a cruise from Madeira into the Mediterranean, which was unbelievable for me to get on a little white ship in Madeira and retrace the steps. We went from Madeira to Casablanca, and it's like, oh my gosh. So anyway, so for a couple of days before we sailed, my husband and I stayed there in Madeira, and I said to him, honey, go sit by the pool. I'm going to go find, I just knew Albert was dead. I don't know how I knew it, but I knew it. So I'm going to go see if I can find Raul Perestrellos, his brother. So as synchronicity would happen, I got in the elevator of the hotel, came down several flights, the doors opened, and there he was. He was walking, I had known him anywhere. He was walking to pick up some film, because he would do, people that wanted to get film developed, they would leave it at the hotel. And my hand to God, those doors opened, and I said, and this is after 20 some odd years, 25 years. Those elevator doors open, and I said, Raul Perestrellos, I assume. I presume, whatever it was that Livingston said.
All right.
And he looked at me, and it was just old home week. And he took my husband and I around Funchal, Madeira, and showed us places that tourists don't get to see. And he was so gracious and so wonderful. So it's a wonderful thing when your life, again, when you come full circle on some of these stories.
Right. What was it like with the kids and Mary Sue? How was the relationship? What did you see as far as the family dynamic and all that kind of stuff?
Loving. She loved her children. The lifestyle was odd, of course. You're on a ship.
Right.
And you have this sort of this super figure that's, the captain, the Commodore. I think he would have loved nothing more than to retire and be able to do his explorations, his archaeological explorations. I think Bob Young told me this, that it just seemed like he was so, he just got pulled back in, that he had to take over the reins of managing the orgs, and he would have rather done something else. And he didn't really have, the one thing I always thought was unfortunate, and I don't know that he would have really welcomed it or not, but he didn't really have any people around him of his own age, his own caliber. There was one guy that was in the Explorers Club, and Elridge was in the Explorers Club, which is quite an accomplishment. And this man loved him and used to write him letters. And because I was on the SO1 line for a while, and I used to think, oh, I wish so much that man could be there and interact, that we could have interacted, more, but it wasn't to be, and so he was.
I think in her book, Janice's book, she mentioned that his father came on board at one point.
That was after me. That was after I
That was
left.
after you
so
left, okay.
I was not there for that.
Okay. Why did you leave the ship in 72?
Well, I got married to my first husband, David Gill, and I had been on there for 4 years, and I was sort of wanting to go home and see my dad and You know, David never loved being on the ship, so we said, well, let's go. Well, we met and married on the ship, and then so he hadn't met my parents. I hadn't met his parents. So we requested a leave, and we took a leave, and then when we got back to America, we petitioned to be able to stay here and work out here,
Okay.
which we did.
And that's when you went to the FOLO?
Yes.
Okay. At that point, when you left the ship, had you had any auditing or training or anything like that? You were still just...
No, I had a little. Listen to this. After 4 years on the ship, I had 35 hours of auditing total up through grade 5, because I think a lot of us, if not most of us, that were in the Sea Org, it wasn't about us getting auditing ourselves. It was about clearing the planet. And for sure me, it was about the game of clearing the planet. So I didn't really invite much auditing. I got it when it was there, but I wasn't.
It wasn't your...
No,
main
and
purpose for
things
being
were kind of quickie then, the quickie grades,
Okay.
you know. So, yeah, when I left the ship, 35 hours of auditing. But
But
training.
you got through grade 5?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
That was
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
fast.
Oh, that was the first hour. Ask me about the other 34. No. I'm telling you, it was quickie.
Jeez. What is your state of case now?
I came out, OT3.
Okay.
But when we came out to California and we requested to stay, and the answer was yes, and to their credit, they shipped me my stuff. That cabinet that I showed you, it came apart.
Great.
They shipped it all, you know, and so I was lucky there. So we worked in estates because my goal then was to try to improve the living standards of Sea Org members.
Okay.
So there was a mission. What year was that? I'm going to say 76, 75, to buy a building for Sea Org housing. So there's 5 people on the mission. David Gill, myself, Terry Van Zer, Norman Chenard, and Connie White. And the 5 of us, you know, found the Fifield Manor. It was originally called the Chateau Elysée, that beautiful Normandy castle in Hollywood. We found it, and Connie convinced LRH to go ahead and buy it. And who helped us so much at a local level, just moral support, was Yvonne Angel.
Mm-hmm.
And so the building, the building in that, it was like a whole square city block. $1 million. The last time I checked, which was not real recent, $77 million
Yeah. Wow.
for that piece of real estate.
Is that where the current CC Int is?
Mm-hmm. Once we bought that manor hotel, that's where I worked until we left in 78. My second husband and I left in 78. And I got into tech then. I got up to class 4. And one thing I can say that I always did, that I believed everybody ought to get 8 hours sleep. I certainly always did.
Mm-hmm.
I believed everybody ought to get 8 hours sleep, 3 squares a day, 2.5 hours of study, 2.5 hours of free time. That's just, it's just silly to push people beyond. So all my staff, and we had about 17 staff, that was our schedule. And I either audited every single staff member up the grades, or if they were OT, I had them, I scheduled auditing for them at the AO, which was attached.
So describe, to get to OT3, you have to go clear. So describe your clear moment, or how that went.
It was real quick.
That first hour? That was a similar story.
It just breezed by. I got my gains from like I said, from working with all these incredible people in the esprit de corps, all the fun and laughter and the adventure, and helping other people, getting them audited, training, I loved it. And so as things sort of dragged along in the mid-70s,
Mm-hmm.
I started to get the feeling that this thing's going to take longer than, well, a billion years. But I could just see that things were going to start to run out of steam.
Mm.
And for the old man, he was in his 70s. Things were starting to run out of steam
For him
too,
well.
you know. So I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to stick this out my whole life. And that's the way most people felt, you know.
Just because it was taking too long.
Yeah, it wasn't ever going to get any better. I mean, we got the Manor Hotel for Sea Org birthing, but it ended up being for public people to come and stay while they got their auditing. It just ended up being...
the felt purposey type of...
Yeah, you know, and so what really did it for me, because I knew I wasn't going to stay a whole lot longer. And my husband, my second husband, did too. He was working at AOLA. He was Captain Clear, Bob Pinkos. He used to go out on the circuit before I met him, and he really motivational guy, you know. So I was so glad when heavy ethics got over with on the ship. I just thought, that's no good. And then that conversation I had with LRH where he said the Liability Cruise should have been danger. And then, so now fast forward to 1978, and I was working out here in PAC. Hadn't been on the ship for 6 years. Never went back, of course, but never saw LRH again after I left. But I thought, I'm going to stay here as long as it's working for me and for everybody. As long as I'm winning and gaining, I know I'm not going to stay here forever, but I was still doing up to class. I was studying to be a class 4 auditor, which I achieved. And everybody was winning and everything. But I thought, when that starts to run out of steam, which I know it will, that'll be the time. It'll be time to go. So what really did it for me, these moments that just stand out in your mind. I went to my in basket one morning, and this ugly piece of goldenrod. I know it wasn't goldenrod because it wasn't an ethics condition or anything, but it was a flag order, I think. Rehabilitation Project Force. And I picked that up like something, and I read that thing, and I said, that's it. That's it.
That was it.
If heavy ethics if this kind of thing is coming back, I am absolutely done.
Now, did you blame LRH for that, or?
No, at the time I kind of did. I don't know why. I don't know whose idea it was. I kind of did blame him for that. It's just too much.
Yeah.
It's way too much. So I read that thing, and it was so ugly and awful, and black boiler suit, no one can talk to you. And I just said, that's it. So my husband and I just sort of started things in motion. He did the routing form at AOLA. And when he finished the routing form, they didn't know what to do. You finished the routing? Yeah. He says, yeah, that means I'm leaving. And so...
like, no, it must be more psych checks or something. You know?
There might be. He did.
Yeah.
The guy was clean as a whistle.
Yeah.
You never met a cleaner guy. He's still one of my best friends. And so, so then I went. So meanwhile, anyone who knows me knows that I always bring a whole lot of mess with me wherever I go. So I had this little apartment. my sister and Arnie Alfred and David Gill and I had rented a little apartment by the Rampart Police Station, by the old Asho, back in 1973. $135 a month, split 4 ways. Anyway, it was like 4 people, 1 bathroom. What are we gonna do with all this abundance? Only 4 people, 1 Whoa, you know.
Having this.
It was absolute havingness,
Yeah.
and we decorated it so cute. It was a charming apartment. I held on to it for 12 years. Even when we moved down to Huntington Beach, I held on to it for a little bit longer. But anyway, so I had this wonderful office in the manor, and I had books, and I had plants, and I had a lot of stuff. I mean, I have to have my stuff. So, knowing I was going to leave, I just slowly started. It was so many trips. Just slowly started emptying out my stuff. And that was the time, that was right about the time that Yvonne died. It was so awful, so sad. One morning, a knock on the door. Come quick, bring your camera. We're getting raided by the FBI. I went, oh my God. And I went running in, and for the entire day, I photographed the raid.
Wow. 77.
77. And, you know, those agents were, they were just so nasty. You know, nasty, evil. And one thing they did that was particularly outrageous, in my opinion, the Manor Hotel is one of the most beautiful buildings that's ever been built on this planet ever. And they had wooden doors up in, I guess the 7th floor was the GO offices. And those agents broke down the door with a sledgehammer. It was just...
Yeah, just show
Just
force.
so awful,
spite,
just so
yeah.
awful. So, but anyway, as things happen, the FBI also had a photographer. So he and I just went off by ourselves and started talking f-stops and shutter speeds. You know, I mean, you
Yeah.
have these experiences in your life where you just have these connections, you know, these. So we talked about photography and this and that, and I just photographed the whole thing. The church has the negatives, of course. And that was really unfortunate, whatever happened. I always promised myself I would never blow. I would just go up to whoever was the commanding officer, the CO, and I'd say, I'm leaving. So there was a real sweet guy that was the commanding officer of the Manor Estates. His name was David Merrill, as I recall. I said, well, David, I have to tell you, I'm leaving. And he was real sweet about it. And later on, I thought maybe he was having the same ideas in his mind, you know.
Now that we're kind of in this space, and you've talked about, you know, maybe not some of the best things. One of the things that I'm still trying to figure out is LRH with his abilities and his perceptions and kind of the top of the totem pole, so to speak. How do we rationalize that with, I mean, from the ship, Susan Meister, his son dying, the GO, and then eventually David Miscavige taking over. Those are big things that you could
And
say.
not surprisingly, I have an answer to all of them. By the way, is my lipstick still on?
It looks perfect. There's some in your teeth, so you're good.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
So we're talking about I
yeah,
guess,
well,
all those like big kind of motivators,
no,
right?
okay. Somehow I got on a letter reg. A letter reg was writing me letters. And she said, exciting news. There's going to be an article on Scientology in a major magazine. I think it was Look. There's a magazine that used to be named Look. There was Life and Look and Time and
Okay.
Newsweek and this, but I think it was Look magazine. And my family subscribed to that magazine. So she said, and this would have been in around 63. I could probably check the date. So I couldn't wait for this magazine. This magazine came to the front door, and luckily I was home, and my parents were not. And I got a hold of this magazine, and that was the real first taste of that effing fake news that we swim in to this day. And it was a hit piece on Scientology. You know, and I thought, well, by golly. So I hid I mean, my parents never even knew that magazine came to our house. They didn't check it. But I kept the article, and here it is.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yes.
Probably the only person in the world that has that.
By the way, I was able to hang on to certain things. Let's see, it's I can't really see, but anyway, here it is.
Have you ever been a boohoo?
And it came from, what was that book?
History of Man.
History of Man, I think. I think it was from History of Man. So of course.
Oh, I see. They took a piece of that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They So they did that, and then, and then here are the FBI agents leaving with the e-meters from Elizabeth, New Jersey.
God.
I mean, how crappy is that?
Hold it up a little bit higher. Yeah, gotcha. I got it.
And then I happened to be at the FBI raid in 1977, a continuation of same. But I mean, what a cheesy, horrible thing. To take the e-meters. They were after him since day one. And unrelenting. And then it was a picture of a auditor and then Red Sharp. I don't know what, I regretted never getting to meet Red Sharp. I don't know what happened there, but And then there's a picture of of a butler pouring LRH's Coke.
Wow.
And then, but the whole thing was just, a slam.
Yeah, it's just nasty, spiteful.
Spiteful, nasty.
That's the word.
Spiteful is the word. Completely spiteful. And, it's just beyond them to be able to come and just say, okay, this is what it is. You just have to learn not to even talk to them. I was, aboard when what happened with Susan Meister. I don't think anybody knows really what happened. She was, at that time, the girlfriend of Amos Jessup. May he rest in peace. Oh my God, I love him so much.
So it wasn't Janice's brother. She was
No. I think Janice's brother had a gun on board. No one knew it.
Okay.
Growing up in southeastern New Mexico, we used to
normal.
take guns to school to show and tell. Come on, it's like.
But the 2D was with Amos.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know. Again, no one knows. And I kind of. Amos never really. Well, anyway, I guess there was a gun on board that was Peter Gillum Jr.'s. And she was living, I guess, with Amos in his cabin. I remember seeing her walk by me. It may have been a day or two, or as I recall, a day or two. We were looking back. Again, this is hindsight.
Right.
She walked past me, and looking back, you could just feel an immense sadness, or she was really caved in. And I don't know why, but I mean she was. But that's looking back. I mean, she walked past me. I remembered it. But at the time, I didn't think anything of it. You walk past somebody in a grocery store, they're not in the best mood. It's But looking back, I do remember feeling that dark energy around her. And then I was sitting in one of the tween decks, and I remember Mary Sue walking by very purposefully, like, and I thought, something, I had no idea, something bad has happened. And then, and so we found out that she had either committed suicide, accidentally shot herself, I don't know. The only thing Amos ever said to me was, what a shock it was to walk into that cabin. And that's all he ever said. And then, because we were under such duress from the deep state, let's just call it what it is.
Sure.
And by the way, Since the minute L. Ron Hubbard published that book, the nanosecond, the deep state was after him relentlessly till he drew his last breath.
DMSMH?
Yes.
Yep.
Since the minute he published DMSMH in 1950, he never had a moment's peace from those people. And we now see what they're doing. I don't know how he withstood the pressure. You know, and so when you're under that much, he was under so much suppression for all the rest of the years of his life, and so were we, indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we could always feel that. You know, just like this Pizzo shite news, you know, magazine. From there on, it just never stopped. And so the fact that this young woman died by gunshot wound, self-inflicted, either accidental or not, you know, suicide, this was like a huge port flap potential.
Right.
So they did what they did in a sort of a guardian's office kind of a way. Her father was not treated well when he came to see. I don't justify that, but I do justify it a little bit under the circumstances. When you are under the kind of pressure that we see how those people are able to bring to bear, you have to take that into context, into consideration. I don't know what happened to Quentin. He was, I guess, wanting to be on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what happened. I guess he was found in the desert, and I don't know if he was murdered. I don't know if it was murder or suicide.
Yeah, I've heard that both.
So I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. And
one day I'll get down. I'll get to the bottom of it because it's important for me personally. And I guess
well, he was
it's part
just
of
a sweet guy. You know, a very nice guy. Very, very nice guy. Always granted beingness. He never, you know, just so sweet. David Miscavige, I never met him. L. Ron Hubbard did not bequeath the Church of Scientology to him. I'm sure you know this.
Yeah, but I'd like to hear what
Well, this is the story I get, that he did an end run around
Pat and Annie.
Pat and Annie, yeah. Looking back right now, myself, I kind of think he probably should have just said, you know what? When I go, it's all yours. You can have it for free. Just take the materials, do with it what you want. I hope you keep it standard, because if you don't, it's going to hurt. But it's free. Don't try to hang on to that. For what? Let it go. Because right now, it's who knows what. When you've been under duress for decades, and when your body's starting to fail you, you're overwhelmed. I don't care how OT you are, you're overwhelmed. You know, I wish some of us old-timers could have visited him or seen him. But there again, he was the same thing on the ship. Nobody from his past, nobody his own age that would have had similar experiences to him were part of his circle. I would have loved to have seen him again. But you didn't know where he was, you weren't allowed, da-da-da-da-da.
It's just mysterious because he's so powerful, and to have basically his anchor points just come in and he's hiding and running is so strange.
Well, had one of the ABC agencies, the IRS, the FBI, the CIA, they would have destroyed him if they could get their hands on him. Oh, you know, and you can't. And unless he maybe went to South America or somewhere, how are you going to get away from it?
All right, I'd love to interview Pat Broker, or Brooker, whatever his name is, however you pronounce it, just to be like, what happened, man? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just say it. Just blow it for us with some truth of like, what happened? How did you have the entire church taken away from you? You know what I mean?
Well,
and
Yeah,
you
pretty.
know what I mean? And what was LRH doing the last date? And I need to know. We need to know this stuff before they disappear. Like David Mayo's gone. I would love to spend a couple of hours with David Mayo.
Yeah.
Like, even on technical matters. Talk about some of these solo knots and things like that. And it's like, what's the deal? So that's my intention behind those questions.
Yeah, I just think the walls just closed in. Fireside chat. I insisted that Willie come into the picture because I just think it's nice to talk to somebody and then later on he can move back again and I have more stories. Where were we? I don't know where we stopped.
Me
We
neither.
were starving. We had a little
We're
snack.
getting a little heavy there. We're getting a
Were
little
we
heavy.
getting heavy?
We're getting a little heavy there.
I haven't even brought any Kleenex out yet. How heavy could that be?
No, not like crying heavy, like more like
No, it was a little heavy.
Little-
Oh no, because you were asking some questions.
a little messy
It
kind of
was-
stuff. But we have to go there.
Did I finish?
I think you finished.
We can always circle back. I have my notes.
Oh God.
Oh my gosh.
Well, all right, totally different subject. We're gonna go to your notes for a second, but I wanted to ask. You said clear was kind of like a whoosh type of thing, because really where your gains were just in being part of the group.
As Ava Gardner once said, deep down I'm really pretty shallow. She really said.
She said that.
I relate.
She's
It was
honest.
Wasn't that cute though? She said that. Yes, it was really all about the game, making the world a better place. I got so much gain from studying the tech and auditing somebody. And as we were talking about earlier, some of the magnificent things that I learned that are so fantastic, you cannot throw this baby out with the bathwater. The laws of listing and nulling, the data series, what else were we talking about? The
Third party law.
oh my gosh, yes, the third
Just
party law.
ARC.
The basics. And I never memorized the axioms like Otto Roos did, but I mean there's things that just a lot of.
So that was that moment. Now take me through OT 1, 2, and 3.
I don't even remember them.
Wow.
Don't even remember. Honestly.
Thinking back, did you feel like there was case gain from what you recall, or?
I had actually done them after I left the Sea Org, and I went in and did them as public,
Okay.
and it was kind of a different place and time.
Yeah.
As far as that, the lower levels, in my opinion, are worth everything. And the upper levels, that's for somebody else to enjoy more or not.
Gotcha.
And in Bob Mongello's interview that you did, some people, if it's not done properly, they can get so keyed in, destroyed, whatever. Thank God that didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
I had a lot, when I left the Sea Org, I had a lot of disagreements with the way things were happening. I had disagreements with L. Ron Hubbard. I made I did not hide that at all. I made no bones about that. But I've sort of tried to put things more back in balance now. There is a balance. You know, it was not just this 10-year torture chamber. No. And I have more fun stories to illustrate that, you know. Oh, God. Cute stories.
So you left, you were, there was a point where you did have some disagreements and maybe a little bit of disaffection.
Yes.
Yes. What happened that occurred?
I got in touch with other people that had similar disagreements and disaffection. Oh, and thank you for asking. There's the answer. That I got in touch with Laurel DeVar. She was not married to Saeed DeVar yet, but I got in touch with her 83-ish, 1983 time. She had just gotten out. She had been working with Jerry Armstrong. He had been tasked with writing the biography of L. Ron Hubbard.
Right.
So he went out to do his research, and he found discrepancies in the official narrative, the official history. And I'm big on historical accuracy.
We've talked about that.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to know the truth about everything. I want to know the truth and the skinny. So I said to Laurel, I said, I want to know every single thing. Every mistake L. Ron Hubbard has ever made.
Mm-hmm.
Like that book.
Mm-hmm.
About that metaphorical book. I think I probably know every mistake he's ever made. I have listened to interviews, read people's debriefs, talked to people, my own experiences of things I didn't agree with. So I feel like I really informed myself about that. And so she and I actually deprogrammed each other because we had both been in the Sea Org for 10 years. I was in 10 years, she was in longer. Mm. Well, you can't be in a situation like that for that many years under those strange circumstances. Very, it's a strange lifestyle.
You think?
I don't know. I was kind of hippy dippy. I mean, no. But yeah. So we literally deprogrammed each other.
Okay.
We discussed everything. We went over everything. We looked under every rock. She helped testify in the trial of Jerry Armstrong. I helped to a degree only in the background. And so, in fact, that little apartment that I had up in Los Angeles, mm-hmm. I was living in Huntington Beach at the time, but I still had this little apartment. And Michael Flynn and Vaughn Young, I never met Vaughn Young. Sadly, I guess he died a long time ago. Anyway, I gave them the apartment to live in for free during the trial. Mm. And then after that, my late husband and I had rented a townhouse here in Huntington Beach. And the FBI came down, a couple of people from not the whole FBI, small townhouse. A couple of guys from the FBI came and interviewed Laurel, and some guys came from the LA Times and interviewed us. And then one IRS guy came, and they got set up. They did a sting operation on him, I think it was.
Okay.
And so I learned. All I wanted to know was just give me. And I had a thought in my mind. I just want the truth. I don't care where it takes me. If you want the truth, you have to be able to say, I don't care where it takes me or what I know there's a term where you smash your images, your But anyway, so I thoroughly covered that. And then over the years, I've never wanted to have training or auditing again this lifetime.
And you still feel that way?
Yeah, because I'm good. I'm good. I just want the deep state to go bye-bye. See, it's all third and fourth dynamic with me.
Yeah.
It's all third and fourth dynamic and so forth. So then as years have gone by, I've got it in balance, I feel. And I can remember the love we had, and there was real love there. And I'm not going to throw that away. And in fact, I had occasion to go to an event at Spanky's house a couple, 3 years ago. And Tony Ortega was there, and he had just written a book about Paulette Cooper. Mm. Well, I got to meet Paulette Cooper and her husband, and she's darling. She's just this adorable woman, and she and I started talking, and my late husband was Jewish, and she and I started telling Yiddish jokes to each other. I thought, I'm standing here,
one of the biggest SPs ever.
Spanky's kitchen, telling Yiddish, trading Yiddish jokes with Paulette Cooper. I mean, because really, as far as I'm concerned, everybody's okay.
Right.
Everybody's okay. I'm sure when she wrote that book when she was young and wasn't thinking, she had no idea how the boom was going to get lowered on her. and it's regrettable, but we've all moved on.
Mm-hmm.
So
What's Spanky's real name?
Sylvia, her name is Sylvia Yvonne Pignon.
Bignon. Okay.
That's her name. And I love her, and she loves me. And so I just feel like I'm very glad to be able to share some stories to round out the picture, because L. Ron Hubbard was not an ogre.
Mm.
He was the most exciting, charismatic, inspiring, just a true leader that you would follow into the jaws of the enemy. I mean, you would follow him. And that's pretty wonderful. There's not too many people like that.
There's not.
You know.
There's not.
There's not. And those kind of people are always going to get... And here's another point I'd like to make. What was it that so threatened the deep state when he published Dynamics, the Modern Science of Mental Health? He published a book. And as I mentioned before, he was attacked relentlessly the rest of his life. Now, what was it about Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, that caused the three-letter agencies, the deep state, to go so nuts? Well, could it be that they were trying to create MK Ultra and trying to completely, brainwash and lobotomize and manipulate and, whatever.
And this is not conspiracy theory. This is documented history.
And he wrote a little pamphlet called Brainwashing.
Brainwashing, yep.
I understand brainwashing and I can take care of it. And the deep state's going, oh no.
You can literally undo what these billions of dollars
so we
have
see
been
what
invested.
they're doing. We see what they're doing. And even today. And so that's what must have threatened them, even though he was not a threat. And to come in and raid the Elizabeth, I guess it was Elizabeth, New Jersey, and steal the e-meters. And then what they did down in Australia. Mm-hmm. Oh, and here's a story. We're back on the ship around Portugal, Morocco, this kind of thing. LRH created a post, LRH Personal PRO, and he put me on it. I was the first one. I lasted 2 years, which was amazing. I'm real good at PR on a one-to-one, but don't ask me to do it on a long-distance comm line. Don't ask me to send out programs and projects and stuff. Anyway. So what he started having me do was what's called a survey. Mm-hmm. And he would put down just 3 or 4 general questions, maybe 2 general questions. He said, I want you to go to every single person on the ship, ask them, how are they, these are the basic, how are they doing, and is there anything that I should know, that they'd like information to get to me? Well, I loved it. And I can write fast, and like an auditor would. Mm-hmm. And I would go to each person, and I mean, it was so great. The Commodore wants to know how you're doing. Oh, and you're just like, it was so wonderful. People just, to be able to express themselves and know he was going to read it and get it and everything, even on the same ship. And then any concerns that they had. And then somewhere along the line, I don't even remember how it happened. He said, well, I would write down their tone level. 3.5, 4.0, above, and, it was pretty much around that area. And he actually gave me a name, which I'd kind of forgotten about, but I got reminded of it some time ago. Called me the walking e-meter. Is that a validation or what?
Wow.
So I found that I had a knack for communicating with the staff, who I loved. I mean, I loved all of them. I loved him, I loved them, so I was just this conduit for all this ARC and love and everything. It was pretty amazing. So I did surveys of all the staff several times, and he could find things out that he needed to know. He also had a daily report line that you could write up anything you wanted him to know. You write it in a daily report, and it would get to his desk, and he would take action if he saw that you needed help. So then here's my story. He said, I want you to do a survey of all the staff at St. Hill. Woo! I'd never been to St. Hill.
You had to go personally?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, as I recall, I flew out of, well, he said do it in Denmark, and then, so I flew out of, as I recall, Lisbon. To Denmark. And I stayed on the ship there, the Athena, I think. Yeah, the Athena was there, docked in Copenhagen. So I surveyed all the staff, did my thing. Flew into Heathrow Airport to survey the St. Hill staff, all the Sea Org there. I had heard something, but no one briefed me on it, and it just wasn't in my mind that you couldn't enter England unless you were British citizen as a Scientologist. They had put a ban on anybody coming in to England to study Scientology. So I go breezing into Heathrow Airport, 23 years old, and I went up to immigration. Oh, big smile, eye contact, big mistake.
Uh-oh.
Don't.
Like, she's awake. What's going on here?
Well, it was a dead giveaway. You're a Scientologist, you come in with this huge smile and make eye contact. And it was like, Gidget goes to... So, they said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to East Grinstead. Anyway, they nailed me. They said, come with us. And I'm in the middle of Heathrow Airport, and they walked me back to a little room, a little windowless room, and locked the door. I went, oh, God.
Jeez.
It was the most terrifying 2 hours of my life, and I'll tell you why. My parents didn't know where I was. Nobody from Denmark was going to know whether I got there or not. Nobody from the ship would have known whether I got there or not. Nobody was looking at... People at St. Hill didn't know I was coming. I was alone, locked in a windowless room in Heathrow Airport. Nobody would have missed me if I'd gone missing. And knowing what I know about how they could sometimes involuntarily commit you and give you shock treatment, and I was terrified.
Make you disappear. If
I just sat there. They came in and took all my possessions, my little suitcase, my purse. They made me take my clothes off down to a slip. Now, in those days, women used to wear full-length slips, thank God. Did you ever see the poster for Butterfield 8 and Elizabeth Taylor standing there and she looks so awesome in her slip? It was amazing. Like, Google it. Anyway, there I am. I did not look amazing. I'm just sitting there like terrified in my slip. Thank God in my slip.
Yeah.
In my slip. They took my clothes. They took my purse. They took everything. Into the room come two women. The scariest women. They were straight out of a James Bond movie. I am not kidding you. They were straight out of a James Bond. Both 6 feet tall. One blonde, one brunette, drop dead gorgeous and evil. And they came in that room and I'm going, oh my God, my God. So here's the backstory. There was a little guy on the ship that had a crush on me. And he was from England. And he had given me an envelope. And he said, now, I'm so excited you're going to my country. He said, now, I want you to open one envelope a day while you're there. Don't open them all at once, but just one a day.
Love letters or...
You're getting ahead of yourself. You're jumping in when... I hadn't opened anything because I wasn't in there yet.
Right.
After a while...
That's impressive. That would have been like...
No, it's like opening a Christmas present.
Yeah, I used to do
that. No, I didn't. I didn't because I wanted to be surprised. Right. So after a while, they said, you're free to go. We are going to, however, deport you. So they brought in my clothes, and they brought in my suitcase, and they brought in my purse. I'm getting dressed. And they said, you can make one phone call. I called St. Hill, and the first person that answered, I don't know who it was. I just burst into tears. And this is what happened to me. Oh my God. And it was, oh God, I was just weeping. It was so horrifying. And so then they said, so then I had to be deported. So they escorted me to an airplane. I didn't have to buy the ticket. And they, So got on the airplane. They shipped me back to Denmark, which I'll tell you in a second. I sat next to an American attorney, young guy. And he said, what on earth happened to you? You know, and I explained it. I've always wondered what happened to him.
Were you in your slip or did they give you your...
No, I told you they brought my clothes back.
Okay.
I'm very modest. If I go to the beach, I have a huge towel, you know. So anyway, no, so I get on this airplane with this, and I spoke to this attorney. I've always wondered what happened to him. His name was David Dubin. I think he was from Arizona, but I don't know. Anyway, I flew back to Copenhagen, got off, and I was so happy to see my shipmates. Stella King was the captain. She was so wonderful. So I spent the night on the ship. Oh, so in my passport, which I still have, I looked for it today. I couldn't just put my hands on it, but I have a photocopy of it for you. And it said, you know, canceled. You know, they'd stamped me in, so I got deported. And so now my passport's tainted. Now, I'm not going to go back to Lisbon, Portugal, and say to the old man, oh, I'm sorry, sir. I got imprisoned, and I didn't get to do my mission, so I'm back. No. I'm going to make it go right. So I went into town, into Copenhagen. I found an embassy or a, what do you call them? Consulate. God bless that woman wherever she is ever. I just came in, I tore my passport a little bit, one of the pages. And I walked in and I said, listen, it's nice to see you. Oh, by the way, I walked into the consulate. This always gets me. I walked in. I saw the American flag behind her desk. Oh my God, I almost lost it. I lose it every time I think about it. When you've been imprisoned, even for, I don't know how people stand to be in prison. Mine was 2 hours and it's still, you know, whenever you've been in a spot like that in a foreign country and you see the American flag,
that symbol.
Oh my gosh. But I held it together and I said, listen, I'm traveling, I'm a tourist, and I'm sure it's fine, it won't matter, but my passport got torn a little bit. Do you think I could get a new passport? It would make me feel better. She said, of course.
There you go.
So I had a couple of pictures, couple of passports, and she got me a brand new, fresh passport right then and there. So I went and spent another night on the ship in Copenhagen, and I took a ferry. Now, I took a ferry, overnight ferry, from Copenhagen to London. I did not go back to Heathrow.
Smart.
These were before computers, but I still was hoping no one would put my name
down. Yeah. Some kind of list.
A little nervous. So I went up to the guy. So I went on an entrance for a ferry, not the plane, not the airplane. Now, the older but wiser girl. No Scientology materials on me, no nothing. And so this kind of grumpy guy was, poor man, he was very grumpy. He was a customs guy. He said, where are you going? And so I matched his tone level. I didn't look at him. I just, I'm a tourist. I'm going to London. I'm going to meet my parents and we're going to do some sightseeing. Stamp. Thank God, you know.
Welcome to Great Britain.
Oh my God. So anyway, I got out. I caught my breath. I caught a taxi. I got to St. Hill. It was just all marvelous. And then, you know, I did my survey. I flew back to Flag. And I came up the gangway. And I came into the foyer. And I looked. And here again, I'm sorry. You just get so choked up. And I looked up the stairway. And the old man was standing at the top of the stairway. And after my ordeal, I mean, he just put his arms out. You know, and I just ran into his arms, and I got this huge bear hug. And, you know, that just, I don't know, it's a meaningful experience. It's not like, well, I had another day at the office, you know what I mean? And then later, I looked at my passport, and I looked at the day that I first set foot on English soil this lifetime. It was July 4th. July 4th, our independence from England. I mean, this is, again, one of these circles where your life just goes in a circle. July the 4th, what are the chances?
What are the chances, exactly?
You know, you just, so that was my story there. It was a good story. And it's written up in Janice's book, and to her credit, this is such a good book.
This is a good book.
I took this picture of Janice.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. Bringing it full circle again.
Yeah.
Because I wondered, like, how did this picture come about?
Well, yeah, I was just walking around the ship with my camera, took it. And my story is in here.
I remember it.
And to her credit,
as you were saying, I was like, yeah.
She never, and I said, please don't change a word, because it's long-winded, but it's my story.
Yeah. All right, now I'm going to go back to where I belong, which is behind the camera. Now you guys have seen my face.
Okay. I forgot one of the most interesting parts of my little story about getting locked up in the Heathrow airport. And that young man that had written me the letter.
Letters.
He said there's a letter inside a letter inside a letter. Just open one every day that you're in England. So once I got to St. Hill and I had time and I looked, and those people had opened my letter. And it's really funny. They opened it, and the first letter was, that was so innocent. I'm so excited you're in London, my city. And it's something about, I hope you get to see Piccadilly Square. I mean, it was like just so innocent and so sweet. And then the next letter, okay, day 2 in London. And I don't, remember, what it said. And 3, 4, 5. And then it got down to a very small envelope sealed with red tape. Red electrician's tape, like red. And on the front, it said, the letter. Well, those security people at Heathrow, they must have just, here it is.
Right.
Here it is, the letter. And they opened it up. And here's what they saw. Oh.
That must have really confused them. Oh, God. Oh, wow. They must have been like,
So, you know what I think must have happened, honestly?
Mm.
And I have no way of knowing. They must have seen this and thought, oh my God.
Yeah, she's not a
They
spy.
must have felt it. No, they must have felt, if they had that kind of ability to feel, they must have felt degraded.
Mm.
To go through put this woman through torture, go through her belongings, open her private mail, and comes this little thing from the newspaper.
From kindergarten.
You cut out this newspaper thing. And I'm just thinking at that point they may have just started to fold stuff back, because they did. They folded it all back up.
Yeah.
And you're free to go. Yeah. So that was
That was that.
This was kind of going back to that party that I was telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
This was a brochure, and I've just photocopied every page of it, because we weren't disseminating Scientology at all, in Europe, from the ship. But what we presented ourselves to be, which was not untrue, was a business management organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was that. And then here's a picture of the ship in front of some port or another.
Mm-hmm.
And then little writing, that's me. And I forget what...
So stylish, dude. My gosh. Or dudette, sorry.
Well, here's the thing. We were young, we were idealistic, we were attractive. You look at pictures of your grandparents. They're movie stars.
Yeah.
You see them now,
Yeah.
But when, you look at their wedding pictures,
Yeah.
and they're gorgeous. And here's the deal. There was what I consider to be 3 main, there was babes on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Babes. 1 blonde, 1 brunette, 1 redhead. The blonde was Hannah Eltringham. She was gorgeous. Kimma Dunleavy, just stunning. My sister, Diane MacDonald, just gorgeous. And red hair. So you got a blonde, a brunette, and a red. And the thing that made them babes is they were all about 5 feet 8 inches tall. That's a babe. When you're 5'3", like me, you're cute. You're not going to be a babe. Nobody's a babe unless they're 5'8". So anyway, so just my own.
So you were cute, but you know.
An old woman reminiscing. So anyway, there's, well, here's that picture I was telling you about. I don't know if you can see it, but hopefully you can,
Yeah, I'll shoot it and then.
This
zoom in.
this is a neat picture. I took this picture during that party that I told you about that I got so choked up just debriefing that party. And there's Liz. She looked so great. We were all wearing cocktail dresses, and these, except for David Ziff, who was just in rapt attention, these men were all executives from the town or the port.
Right.
Excellent public relations. We were not kicked out of ports because of our behavior. I just have to reiterate that.
What was that? CIA involvement.
CIA. Man writes a book and they get threatened because they want to make an MK Ultra.
Super soldier or whatever.
Yeah, super soldier. They want to make a robot, and he wants to make free beings. And that's just a picture of the harbor in Madeira at night. Magical. This is not the original, but this is a copy of my
Copy of the
contract.
original. Wow. So that's the original billion-year contract.
And I guess I'm still on it. Aren't we all? I mean, where are we going to go for 1 billion years? I want to go to the 5th dimension. See, apparently, you are so fun to, see, this is, you just have a great sense of humor and you're just so fun to talk to.
Thank you.
Because it is funny.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's all very funny. Apparently we're on the 3rd dimension here, and apparently the 4th dimension is where it gets real nasty. And then you get to the 5th dimension and it's clear sailing. It's all good. And
So the 4th dimension is like Detroit.
Yeah, and apparently it's the bottom, and it sort of seeps down. The evil stuff seeps down into the 3rd dimension. That's where the evil comes from.
Gotcha.
And I guess that's from beings from other parts of the universe, like the Dracons, the Dracos. I guess they're like real evil. And then there's the Grays.
There's
There's
all
good
kind of,
Grays, bad
racism,
Grays.
whatever, yeah.
There's Mantids. You find out these. And so earlier I mentioned that when I was a child, I wanted to know where could evil come from that is so bad that it's inhuman. Well, guess what? I feel like I got my answer. They're not human. They may even look like they're in human bodies, but they're not human. And so that answers a lot. But that's what got me, going
Yeah,
to find that answer.
I hear you. Again, this lifetime for me has been one of exploration. And when you see them on your screens and whatnot, like Zuckerberg.
Oh God!
I mean, if
All the heads of the tech, all the tech heads.
nobody can tell me that guy is not some kind of robot.
He looks like, didn't he look like Data?
Android.
He looked like Data, but Data in, I guess.
Yeah, from Star Trek.
And
exactly.
he's sweet, but Data was sweet.
Yeah.
But no. They are very scary individuals.
Yeah.
And you get to where you see them and you can know that.
There's some lack of.
Oh, lack of empathy, totally.
Yeah, lack of
Totally.
something, lack of essence of humanity in there.
Total lack of humanity. And they make no bones about the fact they want us all dead. I mean, they make no bones about it.
Yeah.
They'd like a planet. Well, the Georgia Guidestones. That's all you need to know.
Yep.
That's all you need to know. They want 500,000 of us.
Yeah, 500.
Like, so the Earth would be a big cruise ship, and that we're just like the waiters and wait on them. Back in the day, I guess 50s and 60s, the price of the entire bridge was the same as you might pay for a new car.
The entire bridge, all the way.
The entire bridge. And pretty much everybody can afford a new car. I can't right now, but there were times I could. Anyway, but for a new car, you could have the bridge. When the bridge got to be so expensive, it's out of whack. it's out of whack. It's out of alignment. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, as far as I know, no one's delivering the bridge right now anyway, so it doesn't matter. I mean, since when is there a St. Hill special briefing course or a Class 8 course?
I don't know what they're doing at the church besides building buildings
Real estate.
or making OTs do the objectives again or something like that.
Oh gosh, yeah, I have to start from scratch
Yeah.
and totally cave yourself in doing things you shouldn't be doing.
But the product is supposed to be auditors and pre-cleared, and particularly auditors. I don't see them.
No.
It's just all the Thetas in the field.
Yes, and it grieves me that the old time auditors, the really standard auditors, they're not here to teach the new
Right.
ones.
Did you ever witness anything that would be, in conventional terms, supernatural or mystical or kind of like hard to explain conventionally?
You know,
OT abilities, so
I
to speak.
think so. I've kind of forgotten, to be honest with you. I'm just, the one thing that comes to mind is Otto Roos was running through the deck one time, and he the watertight doors, you know, the doors just go like that, and so he was kind of tall, and he was running, and he hit his head, and he fell on the floor, and he was absolutely out cold. I've never seen anybody just completely knocked unconscious. Somebody ran up and got the old man from his office, and he came down, and he didn't say anything. He just didn't assist. And, you know, Otto probably would have come back to consciousness anyway, but I did see him come back to consciousness after that, as a result of that.
With the assist.
That just popped into my mind when you mentioned that. I'll probably think of about a half a dozen things after you've gone home. Willie, listen, hey, can we do a redo? This is one of my favorite stories that my sister experienced. I was on the Royal Scotsman Apollo, and she was on the Athena, had been the Avon River Athena. And Nate Jessup sent it out in a hurricane. Well, he didn't know. I mean, because a hurricane can just come in from anywhere.
Sure.
And anyway, they got in terrible, terrible weather. And the ship is just, well, that little ship, that little Avon River, I mean, she just had this little round bottom, and she would just really, really, they thought they were going over. And the wind is blowing and whistling through the bridge. And my sister is on the helm. There was a guy in the Sea Org named, a big Danish guy, big guy named Tak Sondergaard. He's the one that used to draw all those little characters for the tone scale.
Okay. It sounds like a Viking.
He was just and he was just a huge man. So he makes his way to the bridge, holding on. And there's the opening to the bridge, you know, where the helm is, and he put his hand on either side to steady himself. And he screams out at the top of his lungs, "Diane McDonald!" And she said, "Yes, sir." And he says, "Show us your tits."
Okay. All right, looking back at your entire journey in Scientology, what would you say is the biggest challenge you had to personally overcome throughout all those years? Something which was almost like a barrier, or something which maybe you thought you had to give up or something, and then you just pushed past it and made it go right.
That's these huge questions. I'm the kind of person, I need to think for days to come up. I'll come up with an answer, but it'll take me I don't know. I guess what comes to mind is that it is a very unnatural lifestyle to give your life over to somebody, and I do not recommend it to anyone. it's very much not unlike what my classmates did when they went into the military and went to Vietnam. It was such a bad idea. I am so pro-military and so anti-war, by the way. And it was just such a misadventure. So even though, we gave our life over and we lived this lifestyle, we were not killing people, for God's sake. I mean, put some perspective on it,
Right.
So I would have to say that not being able to really be an individual in your lifestyle, if nothing else. Because I'm kind of a libertarian. I mean, I'm big on the Bill of Rights and this and that.
Right.
So I would have to say there was so many times that you'd think, oh, I'd kind of like to leave. I mean, except for the exciting times where you didn't want to be anywhere else because it was so exciting you couldn't think of being anywhere else.
Right.
But there was always other times where, I want to have a house. I want to have a pet. I want to have, a car and run around. But,
So looking back, I got that.
yeah, just...
Was it worth it?
I don't, I was wondering if you were going to ask that question. And my answer is, I don't know. Like, would I have done it again?
Right.
I will never know because I got so much out of it. And it really ties into your last question of I regret giving my life over to any organization that's going to run my life. But I also keep thinking, what might have happened to me if I wasn't there? Could have been terrible. Could have been awful. I could have met some guy that turned out to be no good.
Mm-hmm.
I could have been sitting in that house with Sharon Tate and them when they all got, you never know who you're going to run into. Come by for a drink. Oops.
Right.
So I have to say it was my destiny, and I'm at peace with that. I have some regrets, but don't we all?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for asking.
Okay. And looking back through all that time period, up to even present time, what's been your biggest win in Scientology?
Knowing that I am a spirit and not a body, I'm sure I would have found that out through Deepak Chopra or other spiritual studies. But just reading that Dianetics when I was 15 years old and opening up so many ideas and meeting the people that I met, I have not met people since like those people. No way, shape, or form. I've met some great people, but the people that I'm closest to now, like Malcolm is like a brother to me, Malcolm Nyman, he lives in London, and other friends that I have around the country. And there again, we're all about meaningful things. There was never anything on the surface. I mean, we were on the ship, we never talked about makeup. We didn't have any. We had a little. But I mean, we didn't care about things like that. We cared about the whole world. And interestingly enough, even though we cared about the whole world, we were not globalists. I mean, that's the opposite.
Right.
That's the total opposite end.
We're trying to control the planet and take it over. Yeah.
Like George Orwell, that's globalism. I love the world, but I want each country to be their own sovereign country. So thank you for those wonderful questions. I mean, it's so amazing. Somebody actually cares about your opinion. They care about what you think. Oh my gosh. When I was in the interim, I requested to go in, and I started out as a wiper. I'm just wiping grease, and then you learn more. And then you become an INR, inspections reports, which means you go around the ship once a watch and you check everything, make sure everything's okay. And by the way, there were two kinds of engineers. The watch person, like me, which means I can drive a car, I can't change the oil in the car. I'm not a repairman. So they had a repair crew that worked day hours. And then they had the shifts, which just ran the engines, ran all the machinery in port or at sea. So I worked my way up to INR, motorman. So then I worked my way up to engineer of the watch, which means I was in charge of the whole engine room for the watch. You know, start and stop a generator when we're at shore. And then when we went to sea, I was starboard main engine throttle, which means you started the main engine, the starboard when there was somebody on the port. And this this is what was so fun about working for him. He said, okay, crew, we're going to leave the Mediterranean tonight. We're going to go out into the Atlantic. And we don't want anybody to know where we are. So we're going to go through, essentially, the Straits of Gibraltar with no lights on. We're going to go in the middle of the night with no lights on. Oh, goody. You can't do that. Excuse me, we did a lot of things you can't do. So I was on the starboard main engine throttle. It was midnight. It was the most exciting, And and the air comes in and it starts the engine and he full speed ahead. Oh my God, the telegraphs go back and forth and you give it to I mean, is there anything more exciting than that? And we went shooting out into the Atlantic, no lights on. Who can say they ever did that? And then he sends the messenger down to tell me how much he loves me.
I didn't capture because the camera was off. Could you show that plaque?
Okay.
And read what it says, if
Okay.
you don't mind?
Okay. 4th of December, 1969. I had petitioned to go into the engine room, and then I petitioned to get out. Because, as I mentioned, if you stay in a job like that too long and you're overrun, you might make a mistake. And if you made a mistake in the engine room, you could destroy the engine, which would essentially destroy the ship. So I petitioned to come back out to be a hostess, public relations. Sylvia Calhoun, engine room. Dear Sylvia, permission granted for you to transfer to the post of hostess, photographer. Thank you for your long and useful work in the engine room. Love, Ron. And then in his own handwriting, which I'll hold up in a minute, my appreciation for your work. I always felt safe conning when you were on watch in the ER.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
And the point being, even if you work for someone in any kind of a capacity, in any kind of a job, if your senior gives you a validation like that, it makes life worthwhile. I just hope I tried to make a little balance, that everything wasn't perfect, obviously, but L. Ron Hubbard was an amazing man, and the technology, at least up, as far as I'm concerned, up through what I was trained to audit, which was class 4, is absolutely amazing. The admin tech, the data series, the laws of listing and nulling, where you find that right item on a person and you get that long fall blow down read and they get their item and their life is changed. I'm sorry, but that's worth a lot. That's worth a lot. And the third party law. And so thank you for listening. I really, really appreciate this debrief. Did I write up my hat? Oh, goodbye, crook.
You're right. Jesus Christ. That's all I would need.
Bang.
All right, good. So that's it for me. But now one last thing is if you could address your fellow Scientologists out there, anything you want to say to the ones that are disaffected or upset or still nattery or whatnot. Just talk right to them because this is...
Well, okay. I'm not trying to change any minds here. And I think if a person's really in the mode of hatred, they may want to stay there. That's your choice. when I left the Sea Org, I was very disaffected. I was angry. I had a few bones to pick with L. Ron Hubbard. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? I'm not, so I'm not, and I took a stand. It was not all good. It was not all bad. And for people that get into Scientology now, I don't know, because I haven't been in Oregon in a long time. There are field people, and I know people are still getting wins. I do know some people that are auditing people and delivering tech, and the people that they're auditing write some pretty amazing success stories. I just think we're still on a mission to make, for spiritual awareness, and to make the whole universe a better place. How's that?
Wonderfully said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The waitress and the architect and the singer and I arrived with the engineer just after the professor worked with the stripper, helping the linguist on orders from the welder. I had come from the woods by the stream. You had come from the mountains. They had sailed in from the islands, others from the city, just north of the desert. Some from London, New York, Auckland, Copenhagen, Joburg, Munich, Sussex, Boston, Paris, Morocco. We flew to Edinburgh, to Lisbon, to Rabat, to Madeira, to LA. We felt the same summons, some bugle call that only we could hear. We showed up, we helped, we did what we could, and more and more. More than we could. We lifted and hauled, we studied, we worked. We ran till we fell, we trudged, we saluted. We worked the gig, gave all we had and more, until the bugle died, until time ran out, until the clock stopped. The mission failed, our bodies failed, the old man left, the rats and roaches took over the show. Mostly we didn't hug or weep, mostly we didn't say goodbye. For us, there is no goodbye. We had never said hello. We ceased to appear there. We ceased to cohere. You drove away, she walked. Some were driven out. He flew, some fled. Some of us just snuck out the back. We all went variously off to find or build some rest stop homes, where we still are, living, dying, loving, working, listening with our innermost hearts, waiting maybe forever for the next time, for the bugle that only we can hear.